What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 56 of the Hoop Venue podcast and episode 1 of our off-season ranking series. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. For this ranking series, we're going to be going through the top 10 scorers today. Then we're going to be going through the top 10 playmakers, the top 10 offensive players, the top 10 defenders at each position, and ultimately we're going to get to a top 25 player rankings, which will probably be a very short and sweet episode, I'd assume, if we're going through 25 players. You know, no back and forth there. That'll be in and out. I'm being sarcastic. That'll be a marathon. But today we're going to be doing our top 10 scores. And actually, Sean, I'm pretty sure we've done a top 10 scores on the show before, right? Like,
I don't think so.
Did we not? I could have sworn we had this conversation like at the beginning of the regular season.
Maybe we did.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like we did.
I'm going to cheat and see.
I can't tell for sure. I'm pretty sure we've done a top 10 scores on this show, or maybe it was on someone else's podcast. But either way, it's just fun to like get these rankings at rankings. Everyone hates rankings, right? The rigidness of number 9 versus number 10, or
we did do this.
We did do this. Yes, we did. I feel like we did. It was like a distant memory.
December 23rd.
Like, I want to preface
17.
Was it? When was it?
Episode 17.
Episode 17. So 40 episodes later, we are doing it again. Updated after the playoffs. We didn't have a playoff sample to go off of, so maybe our lists will change quite a bit. Maybe they'll be the exact same and nothing changed. I don't really know. But what I want to say is, like, just because a player's ranked 8 versus 9 versus 10, nothing is rigid. And Sean and I were, like, kicking guys off the list, moving guys up and down, even just right before the episode. And all that's to say, these are just, there's no real way to split hairs between guys of this caliber. Like, if you're the second best scorer versus the third best scorer, there's actually no level of confidence in terms of, like, you are the better scorer than the other guy. It's just like, which hair can I split to make this subtle difference and rank you over the other guy? But, so throughout I don't know about you, Sean, but for me, like, throughout the list, I'm going to be referencing, like, ranges, like, 1 through, like, I can see this guy's an argument for 3 or 4. This guy's an argument for 8 or 9. And just kind of like emphasizing that these guys are all in tiers together. And if you want to rearrange them, do as you please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good place to start really quickly is let's go 2. Who are 2 of your toughest cuts, or some of your toughest cuts?
2 of my toughest cuts. Well, I'm gonna stay away from, like, my heavy honorable mentions.
Okay.
Just because I want to, like, go more in depth in those guys, but just like the subtle, like, I thought about you, but ultimately decided against you. I'll say 2 of my tougher ones were probably Kyrie Irving and Victor Wembanyama.
Mm-hmm.
I think. What about you? What are 2 of the ones that you, like, kind of considered?
I brought him up off camera, but, like, sneaky Zach LaVine.
Oh,
he's
100%.
awesome.
100%. Yeah,
he's so
45% from 3, freak athlete, one of the best transition scorers in the league, can play on or off the ball. For me, LaVine, the only kind of, like, issue I feel like is not the greatest handle in the world, so he can, like, get early pickups on drives and stuff, and maybe doesn't get to the rim as much as you'd like from someone with that burst, that level of athleticism. Also shies away from contact, so you get lower free throw rates and things like that.
Yeah.
In between game is kind of spotty. Like, he'll get to the mid range occasionally, but not really this heavy mid range scorer. So there's a lot of volatility in terms of, like, the pull up 3 kind of has to be hitting, or he has to be getting out in transition a lot. And I think LaVine, just supremely talented scorer. Another thing that kind of hurt, I don't know how you feel about this, but, like, the lack of a real playoff sample kind of is just tough to gauge. It's like, what do we do with Zach LaVine? That he's never really been in a contending situation. So what would his scoring scale up to? And I guess it's actually a perfect segue. What was kind of like your criteria for not only splitting the hairs, but just like narrowing it down to a list of 12 to 15 guys?
Yeah, so I think a few things I personally took into account was I do think your offensive load matters, and like what kind of burden that is placed on you in terms of lifting up your team's overall offensive production. I think being able to scale up and when the more aggressive playoff defenses show up, especially this year. I think Bron or somebody was talking about how, so they went from calling absolutely everything all the way up to the final game of the year to, you're not getting a single call. You better get 1980s clotheslined in midair for it to be a common foul. But being able to scale up and not have that affect your efficiency or your volume or whatever the case may be. And I think there's some other smaller things too, like how versatile you are as an offensive player. It could give you brownie points, or there's some other things there too. But I think those were the main things I kind of focused on personally. What about you?
Yeah, for me, so my list is obviously, and I'm sure the same way, very playoff centric. I really only like obviously the regular season matters, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But for me, it's about who are the best scorers in the playoffs. That's what I'm trying to answer. For guys like Tatum, Jokic, Shea, we're starting to get these big multi-year playoff samples where they face a bunch of different types of defenses, and the numbers can tell us a lot. Like over these last 2 to 3 years, like we can see who Shea is as a playoff scorer, we can see who Jokic is as a playoff scorer, we can see who Tatum is as a playoff scorer. But for a guy like KD, for example, we've gotten 5 playoff games in the last 2 years. And there's just no indication whatsoever of what this version of Kevin Durant is as a playoff scorer. So that's where the regular season comes into it as like a baseline. What indicators can we draw from the regular season? For example, if you're someone who consistently gets to the rim a lot, that's usually something that translates to the playoffs. We see slashers translate very well to the playoffs. If you're a guy that gets to the free throw line a lot, that's something else that translates to the playoffs. We were talking about Benedict Mathurin off camera. He had like a 63% true shooting in the playoffs, primarily because nobody could keep him from getting to the free throw line. Shea's another example of that. Giannis is another example
It's
of that.
almost like that Shea guy was destined to be good in the playoffs.
He's all right. He's all right. Well, I was going to say another thing is counters. Counters translate to the playoffs, and Shea's another guy. Brunson's another guy. Just tons of counters. Can get to his spots at will. The things that kind of don't translate always are lack of physical gifts. Like if you lack burst, you won't be able to get into the paint as easily. If you lack size, you'll get pushed around by the added physicality. If you're reliant on the pull-up three, or even just three-point shooting in general, you can be really volatile. I think a good example of that is Tatum in the second round against the Knicks, where he has these lows, but then also has those highs, like the 50-point Game 7, because the pull-up three starts falling. So that matters. At the end of the day, though, and I'm sure we're 100% in 100% agreement here, the end goal is to put the ball in the basket as efficiently and as consistently as possible. That's the goal. It's not about how flashy it looks. It's not about how many points you end up with after shooting 30 times. It's simply who's the most effective scorer. And I think a lot goes into that. Like, for example, can you create easy shots for yourself? If so, are there playoff defenses that can limit your ability to create those easy shots? And if that happens, how can you still get your scoring off once those easy shots are taken away? So being scheme-proof is super important. And that's when versatility really starts to matter, because if you face a specific type of scheme, what can you do to adjust? So in my opinion, the perfect scorer is someone who has consistently high volume across multiple playoff series while maintaining at least some level of high efficiency. And efficiency, by my definition, isn't just shooting percentages, but it's also taking care of the ball. Like if you're trying to get into a scoring move and you can't dribble through traffic and you're consistently getting stripped, that makes you a less efficient scorer. So a consistent theme throughout my list, you'll see, like for splitting hairs, is like if this guy just simply takes much better care of the ball. A lot of people associate that with playmaking, but there is like a thing. Scoring turnovers is very much a thing. And then the last part of my criteria was like the scalability of your scoring. How well can you maintain that scoring in different situations? Like, for example, if your scoring is reliant on always having the ball, that scoring won't translate to a championship level offense as well, because now you're going to be with other skilled on-ball guys that you kind of need to share the load with. So I do think like the ability to play off the ball and score off the ball is another big thing. Just like enhancing your team with your scoring is kind of my goal for this list.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So, want to start this off with your number 10?
Actually, I want to do my because I narrowed it down to a list of 12.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
And I want to do my 11 and 12 real quick that were kind of like the really tough cuts that I like barely tossed off the list at the last second. So my number 12, and this one hurt. This one really hurt because I think I might have had him up at like 7 or 8 when we did this last.
I think I know who this is.
It's Devin Booker.
Yep.
Devin Booker's my number 12. I think first thing I want to point to is that his playoff numbers are off the charts, like off the charts good. If we look at the last 3 playoffs, so they didn't make it this year, so it'd be 23 and 24. This is a guy who made 29 points per 75 possessions on 68% true shooting. Just like the shot making of doom. This guy was making every shot in 2023. And then in 2024, he had that one huge game against Minnesota, the game 4 where they got swept, that kind of like skewed the numbers a little bit. But Booker's playoff numbers can rival literally anyone in the league. The problem is that is a pretty small sample. You get 3 series, and some of them are like 4 games. Some of it is really hot shooting that I don't really think he could sustain over an entire run. The main thing, though, is that I just think this version of Booker, I don't know if it was because of the team situation or what, but just was a noticeably worse version of Booker as a scorer. So if we look at the 2023 regular season, 29.5 points per 75 on plus 2% relative true shooting. 2024 season, 27.5 points per 75 on plus 3% relative true shooting. And then this season, 25.5 points per 75 on plus 1% relative true shooting. So we're talking about just since last year, 2 less points per 75 on 2% worse true shooting. To me, that's just like kind of where I split hairs. It's like he got to the rim less, and those shots actually turned into threes. Those layups that he was taking turned into threes on his shot profile, and then he only made 33% of his threes. And so I just think like a less well-rounded scoring diet this year and a little bit less efficient, less volume. To me, just barely a tough cut off the list.
Devin Booker was 11 for me. And
okay.
I feel slightly better about my list now.
Booker's an interesting one because I do think he lacks in the department of like creating easy shots for himself. He doesn't. Yeah. He's not at least in the half court. He's a really good transition scorer, which kind of gets overlooked. Yeah. Consistently at the top of the league in transition scoring, which are easy opportunities. But in the half court, he doesn't really create a lot of easy shots for himself. But where he really wins some arguments is one, off-ball maestro. Like, you can put his scoring in any situation, it's going to translate. He can play next to anyone. And the other thing is the shot making is just so ridiculous. Like the elevation on the mid-range jumpers, the ability to play out of pick and roll, isolation, or the mid-post, the off-the-catch three-point shooting. Like his shot making is so good that it almost doesn't matter that he can't create easy shots at will. But yeah, like I said, this was just kind of a down year for him, so I kind of want to see more before I get him back into my top 10.
Yeah, looking back at my last list, I also had him like right around this spot.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're aging well.
I hated it then. I feel better about it now.
Was there anyone else you were like really close to having in your top 10 but just left off?
So the other name that I want to talk about, I don't think you're gonna have him. I don't think you're gonna have him, but I do want to bring up Donovan Mitchell.
Okay.
I do want to bring him up. I'm going to guess that you do not have Donovan Mitchell in your top 10.
I do have Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, you do. You do have Donovan Mitchell in your top 10. Okay. I do have
Donovan Mitchell.
So I'll take on my part for guessing that Tyler was going to have him in there. And to be completely honest, I think the biggest argument for Donovan Mitchell and the reason why that he was a super, super tough cut for me is that, well, I think to get to the super, like the easiest argument, you have to go to the fact that arguably the biggest detractor from Donovan Mitchell was the fact that he himself took a step back role-wise. So the volume or the numbers aren't going to look as great compared to years past. Also, I would also argue that this was not a very efficient year for Donovan Mitchell, comparatively speaking to even a Devin Booker or compared to his peers, honestly, per 75, negative 0.1 relative true shooting percentage. And just compare him to some of his other peers, just not as efficient. Although in the playoffs, he showed that he could still be a just unstoppable scorer with his downhill rim pressure to pull up 3-ball. So I don't want to. I'm kind of taxing him a little bit for the efficiency and just lack of elite regular season volume. Although the fact that the way he performed in the playoffs while being hurt is something that is commendable, is deserving at least of being a heavy mention on my list and somebody that you had in yours. And I did have him in my list last time. I had him 6.
What's funny is I don't even think I had him on my last list, and you did have him. I think we flipped Booker and Mitchell. I think that's what it was. I'm gonna wait to respond on Mitchell just because I'll get to him in my list, and we'll talk about it then. My last guy, and I feel like you're probably gonna have this guy on your list. So I won't go too in depth. But my other really tough cut at number 11 was LeBron.
I don't have LeBron on my list.
You don't have LeBron, okay. So LeBron was my other really tough cut. And it's mostly like I don't think he can kind of hit the ceiling that he could in maybe just like even just like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The ceiling as a scorer isn't there, and it's mostly just like the regression in athleticism, not just like the burst, but also the left to right movement. He's a lot stiffer these days. I mean, he's 40 years old. What do you expect? Much more of like a specialist type of scorer now, where it's like he'll it kind of reminds me of like the Jimmy Butler thing where he'll get a few buckets in a bunch of different ways, where it's like, okay, now we're going to have a post up and you're capable, you're a huge mismatch in the post. But then if you get a big forward on him, like Randall, for example, all of a sudden the post scoring isn't as effective. So maybe now we'll go to you're the screener in screen and roll. Or you're a cutter, you're stampeding from the wing, or you get the occasional pick and roll. Still a monster transition scorer, still a super high efficiency guy in the regular season and the playoffs. This
Elite
is
catch and shoot guy at this point.
I'll say this is easily his peak as a jump shooter. Had one of his best mid-range scoring seasons, which we talked about. Still just a world-class scorer. Like I said, damn near my top 10. The only thing is I think everyone above him has a higher ceiling as a scorer because they have more of a superpower at this point. Like LeBron at this point isn't good for 9-10 shots at the rim like he was at his peak. It's just that simple. And some of these other guys have something they can really go to and reach these volume heights of like 40-point playoff games that I just don't think LeBron has in him at this point.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think I considered LeBron, but honestly for a similar reason, I was like, I don't think Bron can truly have the offensive burden, offensive load, we're going to call it, of some of these other guys as well. I think LeBron at this point, you kind of pointed this out, is, pun intended, one of the kings of versatility to kind of what you were talking about. Like, he's going to just end up with, he's still going to average 23 or whatever on really good efficiency because he can do, at this point, just about everything offensively from a scoring output and be efficient at it. Past 3 years, past 4 years, if you take out the second one, so the conference finals year, where he was playing on 1 foot the entire year, he's been an elite jump shooter for the past 4 years, except that second one, which is very clearly at this point due to injury, and really, really impacting his lift as a jump shooter, as a pull-up jump shooter. I mean, he was awful. 2015 vibes as a jump shooter that year. Yeah. Like very clearly his peak as a jump shooter these past 4 seasons. And then you're just seeing the further like downhill regression as a slasher, which had been his superpower. And like, okay, it's cool that you're versatile, but that's not 1A offensive option stuff. Or
right.
I had him outside of my top 10.
So in the last 3 playoffs, LeBron 24 points per 75 on 60% true shooting. So like I said, the efficiency's there. That's what you want in a playoff scorer. The thing I will say about the efficiency, though, is that, of course, he can do everything. He can score from everywhere. Hyper efficient at the rim. The 3 ball's been going. Gets to the line at a decent rate. The only thing I'll push back on with the efficiency is it feels like he never really forces the issue anymore, which means like, so for example, if he has to drive through traffic and it's a really tough attempt at the rim, more times than not, he just isn't going to take it, or like isn't going to take the tough mid-range shot. Like he would in years past. Like you look at 2018 LeBron and it's like, I'm going to force the issue. I'm going to get this shot up no matter what the defense does. And obviously it's unfair to compare him to 2018 LeBron. But point being, he's still able to hit these 60% true shooting, 61, 62% in the playoffs, primarily, well, not primarily, but in large part due to the fact that he's just not forcing the issue, which is why you get 24 or 25 points instead of 29 or 30, like some of the guys we're going to talk about further up in this list. Bless you, by the way.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Okay. You want to start it off with your number 10?
I was definitely gonna kick it to you.
Okay, I'll start it off with number 10. Like I said, Booker, LeBron, and then this guy, I just kept rearranging to figure out who was gonna be at 10. My number 10 ended up being Jason Tatum.
Okay.
Jason Tatum, I think, is a really interesting player. He's a big forward, really good ball handler for his size, puts a lot of pressure on the rim. In between game is pretty inconsistent. Like I think he's a very good mid range scorer when you get it to him in the mid post or like face up elbow area, and he can kind of play from the pivot, get to like a one dribble, two dribble pull up. But his mid range game doesn't really exist out of drives. Like you're not going to see him put the ball on the floor. It's a lot different from Shea, for example, where he goes into a drive, the defense reacts, and then he counters with a mid range jumper. It's more so like I can get to the mid range if it's what I'm looking to get to. And I think like Tatum doesn't really have a floater. It's pretty inconsistent. Doesn't really have a short pull up jumper. So the driving can get a little bit one dimensional where it's like I'm either going to get a layup, a foul, or I'm kind of just in an awkward position. That kind of throws me off. And I think that's why a lot of playoff defenses are able to do specific things that force him to get really pull up three reliant. Like in that Knicks series, for example, I think he was taking 9.5 pull up threes a game or something like that before he went down with an injury, which is 2019 James Harden volume, damn near. This guy's shooting a lot of pull up threes. And this is what creates that volatility I was talking about. When the pull up three's falling, Tatum is the best playoff scorer in the league. And I don't even really know if that's a debate. Like you get the 50-point game 7, you get these extreme heights over like 3 or 4 games where he just looks untouchable. The problem is when the pull up three stops falling, he becomes very one dimensional as a scorer, as a shot maker, and the efficiency starts to really lack, and then the Celtics offense kind of collapses, and that's kind of what we saw for stretches. I won't say the entire Knicks year. Like the game before he went down with injury, he was playing phenomenal. That was actually probably the best game I've seen him play. But the games before that, you would get these fourth quarter stretches where they're up by 15, and he just kind of starts shooting a lot of pull-up threes, and if they're not falling, now the Knicks can climb back into it because you're not getting consistently good offense. So I think he's kind of the guy on my list with the biggest disparity between floor and ceiling. I think he's got the lowest floor of anyone we've talked about because when the pull-up three isn't falling, and the driving isn't as diverse as you'd like from someone of his volume, kind of questionable playoff scoring, but then the ceiling is, okay, there's literally no coverage, nothing we can do to stop this guy from getting 30 or 40 at will. And we see that a couple times each series, so I do want to give him credit for that. But another point in his favor, the versatility, the off-ball argument, can play off the ball extremely well, really good catch-and-shoot guy, really good at attacking closeouts, really quick decision-maker. Can be used as a screener, primarily to get switches, but can also screen and roll or pick and pop or whatever. Yeah, what do you think about Tatum? Where'd you have him on your list, if at all?
I had Tatum 9. I had Tatum 9, so I had Tatum one spot higher. I think I had Tatum like a spot higher simply because I just trust so much of the fact that I think his offensive superpower is the fact that he is one of, and maybe this is more of an offensive-centric argument because this leads into some of the other stuff that he does really, really well as an offensive player. But I think he's one of the best isolation creators in the league. And that part of the reason why that is because of the playmaking and things like that, which fair argument. But really, I think it's to the fact that he is an elite slasher to the rim, or one of the better slashers that throw, especially at amongst on-ball wings. And then you leverage that with the pull-up three that he has as a weapon as well. In the playoffs, he shot 41% on pull-up threes, which a lot of that is honestly the Orlando series where he couldn't miss. So some of these numbers are a little bit skewed. But I think coming off of last season, where I would argue, I think the opinion, and this might be finals MVP related, I think the opinion on Tatum was actually a little bit lower than it should have been as an offensive player entering this season, in terms of his value and his ability as a scorer. And to your point, his lows, like throughout the entire playoffs last year, you saw some ugly offensive lows in terms of scoring output. But I think the load he has to carry offensively, the versatility he has offensively as a player, the downhill pressure he consistently generates, and the fact that, okay, yeah, he can be a little jump shot reliant, and I think that is actually the biggest, one of them, not the biggest, like, not concerns. I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. Points of frustration. We'll go with that. Points of frustration with Tatum is he legitimately does have shot selection issues where you saw it constantly all damn near game 1 and game 2 of the Knicks series as the Knicks are actively walking them down. And Tatum has 20-foot isolation with Jalen Brunson guarding them. And instead of putting downhill pressure like you can and realize like there's nobody on the floor, especially in this scenario, that can stop you from getting to the rim, or at the very least doing what you do best and getting paint touch kickouts for Derek White or whatever the case may be. He settles and shoots. I think one of them might have been an awful air ball or something. It was bad. And that is a legitimate criticism of Tatum at times, is the shot selection in certain situations. But downhill pressure, the versatility, the burden he carries offensively, the threat of the pull-up three. Yeah, I've Tatum 9.
That's totally fair, and I actually think I want to say, like, I'm definitely much higher on Tatum as an offensive player than I am specifically on him as a scorer. I think the playmaking is ridiculously good, and that kind of speaks to, like, the isolation creation. Like, he definitely is a guy who forces the defense to react to his isolation scoring at all times, whether that's a double, whether that's a trap off the screen, or loading up in the gaps. Like, Tatum's a guy who, with the ball in his hands, is going to force rotations, and he usually makes the right decision. The shot selection, I agree, is kind of a questionable thing, and that goes back to what I said about just like the volatility. That's what comes with that shot diet. And I think another point I want to really quickly touch on with Tatum and what makes the shot selection especially frustrating at times is that he's one of the best finishers at the rim in the league.
Yes.
Like, he'll consistently shoot like 72% at the rim on mostly self-created looks. He's a monster finisher at the rim. Great touch, can get above the rim, strong enough to finish through contact. I think Tatum's one of the most talented scorers in the league. But like I said, I just think the 9 guys I have ahead of him all have slightly higher floors, and slightly just like more consistently create easy shots for themselves, if that makes sense, against playoff defenses. So just to throw the Tatum numbers at you, 2025 season, regular season, 27 points per 75 on plus 0.7% relative true shooting. So you get strong volume on decent efficiency, about average efficiency. 2025 playoffs, 27.7 points per 75 on negative 0.6 relative true shooting. So again, similar kind of thing. Like really strong volume, about average, slightly below average efficiency. Last 3 playoffs overall, 25.4 points per 75 on 56.7% true shooting. I want to say, though, on the playoff point, the last 3 playoff thing, he's got the biggest sample size of any player, and he's seen the most different defenses of any player. So it is worth noting that, like, Tatum's playoff numbers, if they look worse than someone who was a first or second round exit in back-to-back years, it's a lot harder to score in the 3rd and 4th rounds of a playoffs than the first round, because you're in the dog days, man. Like, you're not, you know what I mean? So I definitely want to give Tatum credit there, and I do think, like, in my opinion, and I want to ask you this too, like, range-wise, I think I could get Tatum as high as 8 on my list. I think 8 is kind of my high point with him.
Sure. I think that's fair.
12 would be my low point. Like 8 to 12 would be my range for Tatum.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Who's your number 10 then?
Number 10 I thought was like an underrated one based off of, the situation he's been in, and maybe just based off how I've seen people talk about him. Now, clearly, if you have him on your list, then I'm not as high on him as you are potentially. But for me, number 10, I have Damian Lillard at 10.
Okay. Can I actually just like pause you for a second and just say something that I feel like we forgot to mention that's really important? We have injury omissions that we never we never said in the intro. This is terrible podcasting. We set a criteria. You had to play at least half the season.
He played half.
Like, half the season. You had to play half the season, 41 plus games to make the list. So Joel Embiid, Zion Williamson, Kawhi Leonard, all were just not eligible. They'd probably all be on both of our lists, but they just simply weren't eligible because of the games played thing. And I just did that just like just to kind of split some hairs between or make a difference between we have a good enough sample of you playing, because like I think Kawhi especially, you get the playoff sample, but the regular season was just him coasting, and it's like, what do we do with that? Zion plays I don't know how many games. Joel Embiid plays like 10 games.
13 for Embiid.
Yeah, there's just nothing we can do with that. So you had to play at least 41 games. And obviously that has nothing to do with Dame. I just wanted to throw that out there before
Dame made you think about it.
List. Yeah, well, you said because of the situations that this guy's in, and I was like, wait, did you include Zion? Because I didn't. That's what made me. And then I was like, Okay, it's Damian Lillard. Okay, yeah, talk to me about Damian Lillard.
Yeah, so I think, and by the situation I was particularly talking about, I was talking about Milwaukee, not necessarily the Achilles. Because I think Milwaukee was just, there's a joke on NBA Twitter. It's like, oh man, LeBron's PR. I just said LeBron for whatever reason, but man, LeBron's PR team is cooking right now with the support he's getting on Twitter or whatever. I don't think Dame FC. Where's Dame FC been at, man? Because personally, I haven't seen it on Twitter. Although I've been a little bit less active, so maybe that's my fault. But I think if you look at Dame, and I'm actually going to use Damian Lillard as his own reference point. If you look at Damian Lillard over the past 5 seasons, this is probably his second or third best season as an offensive player. The only season that has absolutely no chance in hell is 2023. That is one of the best guard seasons.
Not 2021. I'd say both 2021 and 2023.
21, 23, sure. So this is what this is better than 22. This is better than last year.
Okay.
So 2023 is arguably like one of the best guard seasons.
2023 Dame is ridiculous, dude. Ridiculous.
32 points, 32.4 points per 75, plus 6.1% relative true shooting percentage.
He shot like 40% on pull-up threes or something like that, dude.
3 turnovers per 75.
10 free throw attempts per 75 too. Like 2023 Dame was absurd.
Am I sleeping on 21 Dame? Yeah.
21
Dame. Yeah.
Arguably,
my bad.
In 2021 Dame is when you get the playoff series against the Nuggets where he averages like 38.
Yeah. No, I'm bugging. That's why I was like, wait, 21. Did I forget? Yeah, I did. 21 Dame in that playoff run, 31.5 points plus damn near 8% relative true.
Has the best offensive game of all time, in my opinion, in that series as well. The 55-point game.
Yeah.
That was
anyway, but I think one of the bigger differences this year to last year with Dame is noticeably more efficient. Compared to last season, increases relative true shooting percentage by plus 4%, average more per 75 possessions, still has just this ultimate cheat code that, I mean, rivals basically anybody in the league not named like Steph. It's really Steph and him in terms of just fathomable level of pull-up three-point shooting, and what that causes. Like, you cannot play drop on Dame ever. He's mastered, obviously, the pull-up. He shot damn near 50% on pull-up twos this season. Shot 35% on pull-up threes this season. 41. If you leave him open on catch and shoot, 41% catch and shoot three-point shooter. Like 92nd percentile ball screen scorer. And you're in a league, by the way, of elite ball screen scorers like Shea or Brunson or Halliburton's a really good pick and roll score. Harden, like it also being in a high volume guy on pick and roll and isolations too. 90th percentile in terms of frequency and isolation in the regular season. 72nd percentile in terms of efficiency, in terms of points per possession. And I think that's the other thing that matters too. I think Dame isn't at this point this high level, this high volume turnover guy. This season, a regular season, 2.8 turnovers per 75 possessions. So the fact that you're not going to have massive turnover problems with Dame, the fact that he has this ultimate cheat code in terms of pull-up three-point shooting, I think the one thing that you could potentially poke at with Dame is the fact that the rim pressure has continued to gradually get worse. This season, 20% of his shot attempts were at the rim compared to 24 last season, 27 in 2023, and 26 if you round up in 2022. So the rim pressure throughout his career, if you look at just literally going back from his rookie season, it's just continually like slightly gone down. Really, if you want to be fair, you could go back and say since 2019 because he kind of had a mid-career like bump back up to plus 30% rim frequency. And this is maybe unfair, but you do wonder a little bit like, okay, cool, like your life is somewhat a little bit easier because you are playing next to such a high ball dominant guy in Giannis. In terms of there is just naturally going to be so much attention given to Giannis, and not taking that away from Dame in terms of the attention that he's going to create. But I think Dame as a scorer in 2025 might honestly be a little bit underrated. And it sucks the injury he had. I think that kind of played a part of it too. I think the fact that he didn't finish the regular season might also contribute to that as well. But I do have Dame at 10, and I'm going to guess that he is on your list.
Dame's not on my list.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have Dame, so maybe I'm underrating Dame, like you said, because of the situation thing. I think that definitely leaves a sour taste. I think Dame would probably be 13th on my list if I like kept going after 12. So
Okay.
probably would have been like my first guy I didn't talk about. The thing with Dame that's really interesting is, like you said, he's still got that superpower. The pull-up three. I will say the pull-up three was noticeably less efficient this year than in the last couple of years. Like it was 35% as opposed to like 37 or 38 throughout most of his prime. Could just be sample size, could just be like a down year, but worth noting, I think. I actually want to push back a little bit on one of the negative points you made for Dame. I don't really think his life was made that much easier by Giannis. I don't think there was
I
too
knew you were
much
going to say that.
synergy with that dude. Like, I do think he got more spot up three opportunities, which are obviously high efficiency. Like you said, made 41% of his catch and shoot threes off of Giannis. So that is definitely a plus. But in terms of Giannis isn't the type of screener that Dame thrives with. And I don't necessarily want to count that as like a fault of Giannis. But there's something to be said about Dame's two-man chemistry with Nurkic being worlds higher than Giannis. Just simply because Nurkic is holding the screen, and his entire game plan is I am going to free up Dame, then I'm going to look for the short roll pocket pass. Whereas Giannis is screening with the intention of I'm going to dive at the rim and everyone's going to collapse on me. And it's just a different type of look that I don't think Dame's skill set specifically is maximized by. I think like Giannis is the type of roller you'd want if you have Luka Doncic. Whereas Dame is like, I need to free up off this screen. I need this pull-up three. And then the defense has to put two on the ball every single time. Then that opens up my playmaking, blah, 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 blah. So I do think in that line of thinking, and also Dame's just at his best with the ball in his hands. So Giannis having more of an on-ball load, I do think takes away some of what Dame does best. And Dame's at his best in the pick and roll. You talked about it with the numbers. He's been one of the best pick and roll scorers every year since he's been in the league. He's just an amazing, amazing pick and roll scorer. I think the reason I didn't heavily consider Dame for my top 10 is more geared towards the playoffs. Now, obviously, we have no playoff sample to work with, basically. We get that one Indiana series, and then we get this year's injured series. So I'm not even going to reference playoff numbers. It's more so like where my head's at in terms of how his skill set should translate. And where I push back is I think what made Dame such an unstoppable scorer at his absolute peak was the fact that he was probably the second best pull-up three-point shooter of all time behind Steph. But then also ridiculously explosive slasher. So it's like, if you put two on the ball, I can split this. Or if you press up on my three, I can get around you. Elite change of pace, elite change of direction. And he paired that with the pull-up three-point shooting to just be this super dynamic slash and splash on ball threat where it's like, okay, I'm going to get to the rim for 30% of my shots and make almost 70% of those. I'm going to get to the line 10 times a game and make 92% of my free throws, which is such a huge point in favor of Dame even now. 92% free throw shooter. That's so valuable, so important. But then also, as soon as you overplay the drive, step back 40% three. And it was that like yin and yang type of play style that allowed him to get to 30 points a game so efficiently. I think 2020 was actually the absolute peak of the slashing. Like the dude was getting to the rim. Just on Basketball Reference, just getting to 0 to 3 feet for 30% of his shot attempts. Crazy slashing to go along with a 40% 3-point shot. Just absurd on-ball scorer. I think the slashing regressing to the point it's gotten to makes the scoring a lot more one-dimensional. So you get into these playoff defenses where it's like, okay, now we can put two on the ball. He's not as much of a threat to split. Or now we can press up on the 3-point shot. He's not as much of a threat to blow by. And I think that makes him have to take tougher shots. It makes him a lot more volatile. Like the floor isn't as high. You get more streakier performances. And you see that throughout the course of the regular season too, where he has these downs and then he has these highs. That to me is kind of the one pushback with Dame. And then also the fact that when the driving regresses, you usually want to see some sort of like short mid-range development because like maybe I can't get all the way to the rim, but maybe I can rely on this floater. Dame doesn't have a floater. That's always been like my one, even peak Dame, like 2023 Dame, my big hangback has always been he doesn't have that short mid-range scoring. This season he shot 39% from 3 to 10 feet. Last season, 31% from 3 to 10 feet. Just not a part of his game. So if you're not going to get all the way to the rim consistently, you don't have the short mid range consistently. Now you're one of the ultimate jump shot reliant guys in the league at 6'2" or whatever his official height is. To me, that's kind of the one pushback. I think the pull-up three gives him such a nice like baseline of I'm always going to be a threat to pressure the defense at a high level. I'm always a threat to get to 30 points off volume. Super high ceiling scorer. Going to get to the line a lot. Going to make all of those. But to me, it's just a regression as a slasher. As someone who's already kind of physically limited, to me, that just I think other guys just generate more pressure as a playoff scorer.
Fair.
So like I'm not mad at Dame being in your list. I think that's fair. I'm genuinely surprised you have him over Donovan Mitchell though.
Yeah.
Like that really surprises me. But
I'm a surprising guy.
Yeah, you're just out here shocking the world today, dude. I love it. I love it. Okay. So
you're number 9, I think.
We're at my number 9. And this guy, this one hurt. It hurt having him this low. It feels really low because I could probably get him up to like 5, actually. I think this guy's got a huge range. Probably the biggest range of anyone on my list. I've got Anthony Edwards at number 9.
Okay.
I've got Anthony Edwards at 9, and I'm sure you're going to have him a lot higher. I know you're higher on Ant. This is a really tough one because he's got the superpower of I can get to the rim whenever I want, pretty much. You cannot stop him from getting 2 feet in the paint, and I think I'm actually getting higher on Ant. I think Ant's obviously a score-first player. This playoff run made me a lot higher on his playmaking than anything. Specifically the OKC series, because they were showing him some crazy aggressive coverages. They tried trapping, they tried dropping, they tried switching, they tried zoning him up, they tried everything, and he just like got 2 feet in the paint and made the right kick out pass basically every single possession. Like there was a game in that series where he had like 17 points, but it was an offensive masterclass because he made every single right read. And I made a video on it, and all the Thunder fans were like, he didn't do anything, he didn't score. And it's like, no, Ant played a hell of a game. To me, the scoring is we're now 2 playoff runs in a row where he runs into a really good paint defense, and the scoring just kind of takes a backseat. Like the Dallas series starts to get really jump shot reliant and just isn't hitting. Comes into this season, takes this huge leap as a pull-up three-point shooter. But then in the playoffs, that shot went away. So in the regular season, he made 38.5% of his pull-up threes on 8 attempts a game. Mm-hmm. All-time great pull-up three-point shooting season. In the playoffs, 28.7% on pull-up threes on 6 attempts a game. So to me, that's kind of like maybe that shot, it could just be small sample size. It could be that shot isn't sustainable. It could be he got tired, his legs gave out, and he started to just rely on the pull. Like we know Ants had conditioning concerns in the problem, so maybe that was it.
Concerns in the problems?
Like, what'd you say?
Concerns in the problems?
Is that what I said?
Yeah, I have no right to say that. My bad.
Conditioning.
Considering my horrible grammar. Yeah,
conditioning problems is what I meant to say. He said concerns in the problems. That's wow.
Play the footage back.
That is brutal. He's had conditioning problems in the past, and that could be part of it. My big question with Ant, like the question that gives him such a huge range, in my opinion, is what do we do with the pull-up three? Like, do we take the regular season at face value? Do we look at the playoffs and be like, maybe he needs to still develop more? I don't know. I don't know what to do with the pull-up three. That's why I kind of have this huge range for him where it's like I could see him as high as 5 if you trust the pull-up three to be a near 40% shot. Because if he's a 40% pull-up three-point shooter, along with the fact that nobody can stay in front of him, but also the fact that he's a big, burly slasher, it's kind of just a supercharged version of what I talked about with Dame, where it's like, step up on me, blow by. And then I'm also big, physical. But then it's sag off, now I got a 40% pull-up three. I don't know what to do with that, so that's kind of why I have this, like, questionable range for him. 2025 regular season, 28 points per 75, plus 2% relative true shooting. So, to this point, the best regular season scorer we've talked about, probably. 2025 playoffs, though, 25 points per 75, negative 0.3 relative true shooting. So, you kind of see what I'm talking about. The volume dropped a little bit. But some of that is just him seeing such aggressive coverages and then responding to that in the correct way as a playmaker, which is why I think as an offensive player, I'm so high on Ant right now. But it's specifically the scoring. Like, we see these aggressive defenses, and then he doesn't have the in-between game of some of these other guys to just get his points off at will. Not a great finisher at the rim for how explosive of a slasher he is. The touch is a little bit questionable. In the last 3 playoff runs, he's made 62% of his shots at the rim, which is cool, but not amazing. Last 3 playoffs overall, 26 points per 75, 58% true shooting. The signals are there. The ceiling is there. You get these playoff series where he just looks superhuman, but I do think he's another guy who the floor can get pretty low when he sees these aggressive paint defenses and doesn't really have a shot he can get to at will 9 or 10 times a game.
I'm going to hold off on my Ant take. I do have Ant on my list. And I'm going to, instead of responding, I'm going to completely hold off. And I'm actually we're going to go snake style. I'm going to toss it back to you for 8 because we should both be on 8 now.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you gave it back to me because I wanted to kind of do these guys back to back.
Okay.
My 8 is Donovan Mitchell. And the reason I wanted to do these back to back is because I think they're kind of similar in terms of play style. Like, you can draw a lot of similarities between Donovan Mitchell and Anthony Edwards because of the way they operate within the offense. They're high ball screen guys. They're slash first guys. They take volume pull up threes. They both kind of lack of an in-between game at times. And there were a few ways I split the difference between Mitchell and Ant and just barely got Mitchell ahead. So one of my big concerns with Mitchell, like one of his big flaws in my opinion, up until 2023, was that when the driving lanes started to get taken away in the playoffs, he would kind of resort to just this absurd volume 3-point shooting. And it just created a ton of volatility. You get the 2020 bubble where the shot isn't missing and he looks like the best scorer of all time. You get that again in 2021. The pull-up three's hitting at like a 45% clip or something stupid, and he looks like the best scorer of all time. But then you get 2022, the pull-up three stops falling, and he just doesn't look like a great playoff scorer. 2023 against the Knicks, you get that series where, granted, the Cavs spacing was atrocious, but same thing. He starts to take a lot of volume pull-up threes against this Knicks defense, and head-to-head, Brunson just looks like a much better scorer in that series, start to finish. The thing is, these last 2 playoff runs in particular for Mitchell have been a lot different. We kind of started to see it in Orlando, where Orlando was one of the best defenses in the league last year. They played a very aggressive defense on Mitchell, and he just put his head down and slashed relentlessly, dude. Like, especially like you get those high pickup gathers. You get the spins, the lengthy strides, the ability to use his body to create contact. Donovan Mitchell, I always compare him to a running back with his style of driving. The sharp cuts and changes of direction, the way he lowers his shoulder and creates with contact. Donovan Mitchell is an unstoppable slasher when he's got the mentality that he's an unstoppable slasher. And I think in the last 3 playoff series, last 4, the Miami series is kind of fake to me because they just blitz them so easily. Last 4 playoff series, we've seen that version of Donovan Mitchell. Orlando, we see it against Boston too in 2024. We saw it against Miami this year and then Indiana this year, where, especially I think it was games 1 and 2 against Indiana, just not every single play he's trying to drive, every single play, and they just couldn't do anything to keep him from getting to the paint. And I think that version of Mitchell is just like one of the 3 or 4 best drivers probably of the 2020s decade, because you can't do anything to stop him because the handle, he's got a 6'10" wingspan, but he's got the ball on a string. And then he's got the super strong lower body. Like I said, just cannot keep him out of the paint. I hear your point on the regular season scoring. The 27.6 points per 75, negative 0.1% relative true shooting. I agree that it was somewhat concerning. All of my concerns went away the moment the playoffs started because it was clear to me that he just kind of coasted. The Cavs had this all-time efficient offense. He was not getting to the rim nearly as much as in years past. His rim rate was way down in the regular season. And I was waiting to see, like, is this an actual regression? Or is it he's kind of coasting because the Cavs have such a good offense? Playoff start, he's right back to, like, his peak as a slasher. And immediately I'm like, okay, we can throw the regular season out the window. I don't care anymore. The playoffs show me that he still has that level as a driver. 2025 playoffs, 34.5 points per 75 on negative .5 relative true shooting. So not the super high efficiency guy still, but so much scoring pressure. Last 3 playoffs, 29.5 points per 75, 56.6% true shooting. I actually think, in terms of last 3 playoffs, he has the fourth highest volume of any player I considered for the list. So yeah, the on-ball scoring, super good. I'd say one of the hangbacks is not the greatest off-ball scorer, like not always a quick trigger as a catch and shoot guy, not a super active mover, not always super quick to attack off the catch. If you want to, I would say Ant has the edge in off-ball scoring. Also, the size makes it more effective as a cutter and things like that. But where I actually want to make the comparison between Mitchell. The reason I wanted to do Mitchell and Edwards back to back is because I pulled a few specific numbers from the last 3 playoff runs just to really compare these guys head to head. Because they have a lot of the same strengths and flaws. So, first thing, both of these guys, superpower is we can get to the rim at will. Both of them averaged 6 rim field goal attempts per 75 in the last 3 playoff runs, so you get an easy comparison there. Mitchell made 63% of his shots at the rim, and Ant made 62%. So the rim finishing and scoring volume difference is pretty much negligible. Like 2 slashers who are pretty much performing at the same quality at the rim. Donovan Mitchell has gotten to the free throw line 7.5 times per 75. Ant just 6 times. So Mitchell does have a slight edge in terms of free throw volume. The big thing, though, for me, that really separates these guys and just was like the ultimate why I got Mitchell at 8 and Ant at 9 is the short mid range. Mitchell has added the floater as a consistent counter and like the short pull up jumper as a consistent counter, and Ant hasn't made that development yet. So in these last 3 playoff runs, Mitchell's attempted 7 short mid range shots per 75, Ant 4.5. Mitchell's made 52% of them, Ant's made 42% of them. And to me, that's the one area where I was like, okay, if I have to split hairs between these guys, they both slash at similar levels. They both take volume pull-up threes, and in the playoffs have been similar kind of caliber three-point shooters. Where can I draw the line? I think Mitchell just has a slightly more advanced short mid-range game, a little bit better at getting to the line. And to me, yeah, Mitchell just barely gets the edge here at number 8. Same thing, I could see Mitchell at 5. I could see Mitchell all the way down at like 11 or 12, like you said, if you're lower on some of the other stuff, like the jump shot reliance at times, the lack of an off-ball game at times. But to me, Mitchell in these last 2 playoff runs, the relentless slashing to me has been enough to solidify himself at number 8 here.
Yeah, I'm just willing to admit that I might have just underrated Donovan Mitchell. And that's okay. All right, so my number 8. And for me, honestly, and I'm like, I did a little tweak to my list, thinking about some stuff while you were talking. So number 8 is a slight change. 6 through 8 changed slightly for me, but these are, in my opinion at least, I think 6 through 8 for me on my list could probably be interchanged. And I would argue that maybe 6 can get to 5, but I don't think 7 or 8 for me in terms of how I feel about my own list. So I mean, like I could see it, but I would, you know what I'm saying? For me, I am going to put Kevin Durant at 8. I'm going to put Kevin Durant at 8. And honestly, the biggest, I'm going to start with the negative for KD, and you kind of made the point for me already earlier. The biggest like drawback to KD is the fact that his playoff sample out of everybody on this list is probably the weakest out of everybody here. You have nothing this year. You have a 4-game sweep last year, and then you have 2 series in 2023. So in 3 years, you have 3 series. This is not enough of a playoff sample to really be able to stack you up and compare you against, for example, an Anthony Edwards, who is coming off of back-to-back years of playing in 3+ series and looking incredibly comfortable in a series against you. It looked like, honestly, the best player on the floor in that series against Phoenix last year, or even the year before that. I think they lost to Denver in round 1, so you get an additional series. Or if we're going, example of Brunson coming off a conference finals run in a second round exit last year, he just doesn't have the playoff sample size to stack up against anybody else that's here, basically, in my opinion, which I do think is a fair drawback to Kevin Durant. Anyway, almost 27 points per game per 75. Ridiculous levels of efficiency. I think the two biggest arguments for Kevin Durant is one, like I said, the efficiency, plus 6.5 relative true shooting percentage. And then you have the fact that he's one of the most versatile offensive scorers of all time. And that has made his game age so beautifully. I mean, just outside the fact that he's an elite jump shooter. And that gives him a legitimate offensive superpower where it's, look, just give me the ball. It almost doesn't matter where it's at. You can go mid-post isolations for Kevin Durant. You can have him on off-screen action. You can still use him as a pick-and-roll creator. And I think he has gradually throughout his career gotten better at some of the handle. The handle is still loose, and the turnovers are still going to be present. But I do think he's gotten better at it. So for me, at least, the fact that he's not this downhill slasher, I think that's also something that can make his game, and maybe I'm a hypocrite, but that can make his game a little jump shot reliant at times. But hell, he's one of the best jump shooters of all time, one of the most versatile and just all around best scorers of all time. I mean, for crying out loud, he had like an 11% rim frequency this season.
Yeah.
So that, the lack of pressure, and the fact that there's just such a limited playoff sample, I am going to have Kevin Durant at 8.
That's totally fair. I had KD at 7, so
Okay.
pretty convenient. I think KD, the interesting thing with KD is a lot of people will push back on your playoff sample point and be like, he's had all these championship runs. He's had all these deep runs. And I think that overlooks just how different KD as a scorer is from what he was even just like 5 years ago.
Even. Or 2021, the better one.
I think Kevin Durant has regressed so much as a slasher to the point where it's rare to see him drive all the way to the rim. It's rare. Most of his rim shot, he attempted 2 shots at the rim every 75 possessions last year, and most of those are like a cut and then a transition layup. Rarely ever will you see him start a drive from the top of the key, get all the way around his man, and get a layup or dunk. It just doesn't happen. He's pulling up for the jumper. And, of course, like, it's funny because we criticize Kevin Durant for, like, he doesn't have the superpower of being able to create an easy shot at the rim for himself. But it's like, well, every shot is pretty much easy for Kevin Durant. When you're that tall and when you're that good of a pull-up jump shooter, like, you're guaranteed to shoot 52% from mid-range and 43% from 3 or whatever he shot. Kevin Durant is just, like, the ultimate example of how far can shot making get you. Because, like you said, the turnovers are a concern in the playoffs. He has a very high turnover rate in the playoffs, and it's mostly because the handle can't, like, the handle's so lengthy that he can't take that extra dribble through tight gaps. He has to pick up the ball early. That's why he doesn't get to the rim as much. And settles for, like, tough 16-foot jumpers. Kevin Durant, to me, is someone whose floor as a scorer is so high because of everything he does so well. Like, he's probably one of, if not the best off-ball scorer in the league right now, between his ability to just spot up and shoot, his ability to be used as a screener, the way he can fly off of screens, and just every shot is a good shot for him. Even, I know I said he doesn't get to the rim much, but if he gets to the rim, it's like an 80% shot for him. If he gets to the mid-range, it's like a 55% shot. Like, every shot is good for Kevin Durant. His kind of area of lacking is that at this stage in his career, he can't create these shots as easily for himself as he could in years past, or as easily as some of these other guys like Mitchell that we just talked about and Edwards that we just talked about. You put the ball in their hands, you organize your entire offense around, you can just handle the ball, and you can get to your spot at will, and everything kind of falls into place after that. Kevin Durant kind of has to have stuff in place. Like, you need a true point guard. You need a center who's going to demand rim attention, because then that allows Kevin Durant to more easily get to his spots in the mid-range without getting loaded up on. Still commands double teams at will. Will just shoot over them at will. But I'd say the biggest difference is that his spots of operation have changed. Less perimeter isolation, less pick and roll, a lot more like mid-post face-up type stuff, a lot more off-ball stuff. And I do think this was a good year for him in terms of shot diet. Like, he actually increased the three-point volume quite a bit, and that worked out well under Budenholzer. But I think I agree with you. Like, Kevin Durant, the hangback is yes, the playoff sample, but also if we did get a big playoff sample, what would that lack of rim pressure look like? What would the turnovers look like? How far could the jump shot take him? Because we saw like in that Denver series even a few years ago, he gets a couple of games in there where he's shooting like 35% from the field.
I thought you were about to talk about game 3 and 4 when him and Booker just.
Oh well, that too. That's the volatility though. Like,
Yeah.
you get games where he looks superhuman because the jump shot's falling, and when the jump shot's falling, there is no defense for it because he's too tall. He's gonna hezzy pull every single play. But then you get like I said, when he doesn't have that thing he can fall back on, he can't just get to a layup at will. And the next guy on my list that I'm not gonna get to yet has something else he can fall back on at will. That is just kind of fake. But Kevin Durant,
I think I know who 6 is.
I think Kevin Durant, between the off-ball versatility, between the shot making, between the size, has to have a spot on this list. Like I can't see him getting below 10. He has to be on this list.
Yeah.
But lower ceiling in the playoffs because of some of the other concerns from some of these other guys. So I feel good about him in like this 5 to 7, 8 range for me. And he feels like one of the more locked in guys to me.
So for you, 10 through 7, because you're now at 6. I have to reveal my 7. 10 through 7 for you. Can you just repeat it? I know Tatum's 10.
Yeah, so I got 10 Jason Tatum, 9 Anthony Edwards, 8 Donovan Mitchell, and 7 Kevin Durant.
Okay.
And for you, who's your 10 through 8?
My 10 through 8 so far is Damian Lillard at 10, Jason Tatum at 9, Kevin Durant at 8, and number 7 is where I go Anthony Edwards.
Gotcha.
I go Anthony Edwards at 7, and I to be completely transparent, I had him at 6 at first. I did have Ant at 6, and partially listening to you and partially like going over my reasoning for having Ant at 6. The one of the bigger criticisms you had for Ant, and if I botch anything here, please stop and correct me. But I thought one of your biggest criticisms for Ant was the lack of a short mid-range counter in terms of, okay, pull-up three isn't falling, the rim, okay, the aggressive defenses, the rim is now cut off. Like, what's your next counter? And to be honest with you, my response to that in my head was, because it was more of a projecting thing, because that is something that I think you can't deny about Ant. But if we're evaluating players off of what we just saw, like my answer to that question is a projecting thing, and now that might give me more reason to be higher on him as a overall player. But for simply the purposes of like evaluating who's the scorer, I had to drop that down a little bit. Now, to cap off the counterpoint, I actually believe that will be fixed next year. I think Ant has showed us. I think each year, I feel like I said this after the conference finals run. Each year there has been something glaring with Ant's offensive game, and the next year it gets fixed. Where last year it was like, dude, you have to be able to beat drop, or you're just cooked. You're going to be this really high ceiling offensive player in the regular season. You might even look superhuman in a playoff series like Phoenix last year. But for you becoming a more well-rounded offensive player, you need to be able to be a knocked out pull-up three-point shooter against drop. And throughout the regular season, and I actually do buy the shooting a little bit more, and I think the playoff pull-up three-point ball falling off a little bit, I actually do have a potential answer for that. But I'm going to, so for me at least, I buy the shot, and I buy that legitimate improvement. You were unstoppable from three all year, from on pull-up threes all year. Or the passing and the playmaking, dude. Like, we're just going to zone up, and you already don't want to shoot tough middies anyway. So we're going to take off the rim, and we're going to zone up on you, and cool, now what? Make that pass. And he literally won them 2 playoff series off the fact that, like, the Lakers' whole defensive game plan was, we're going to try, keyword try. We're going to try to zone up on you super early, and can you make this aggressive corner skip pass pretty consistently to Jay McDaniels? And he proved that he could do that, and he did it even pretty well as well, obviously, against OKC, like you already mentioned. I think that the pull-up three falling might honestly be personally because I think the counter is going to help that. And what I mean by that is I think if you compare him to Shea, Shea doesn't necessarily have to work for every shot. What I mean by that is OKC can bring the ball up the floor and just have Shea post up in the mid post or at the nail or whatever, and then go to work from there. Instead of you immediately seeing 5 bodies and then having to create everything for yourself. I think personally, from a scoring output for Ant, that's the next adjustment. Can you find some semblance of a mid post or below the 3-point line mid range game? Like I think in the playoffs, he shot. I just had it pulled up. In the playoffs, Ant shot, I think it was maybe 2 mid-range attempts per game, 2 pull-up mid-range attempts per game, shot 35%. Like, and I'm scared to look at any of the like long 2 or short mid-range 2 or post-up stuff, but I think that's going to make the pull-up 3 in the playoffs look better because now you're not working for that, and now you're not exhausted and gassed.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's the projection thing, and that's why I kind of bumped him back down. I'm not even going to talk about the positives in terms of the downhill rim pressure. I think you hit on everything positive-wise nicely, and I think the arrow is still pointing up on Ant. I think Ant's awesome.
Yeah, Ant is really interesting. I will say, my criteria for ranking a scorer does hurt Ant in some regard because the only thing I'm focused on at the end of the day is like how much value you're adding specifically just through your scoring. So scoring gravity to me falls into playmaking, and that's what's interesting because I do think Ant probably forces the most aggressive defensive game planning of any player in the league right now. Is that a hot take? Like between the slashing and the pull-up shooting, he forces more aggressive defensive game planning than maybe any other player in the league. Like some other guys that would come to mind are like Steph, Shea, Giannis, Jokic too, obviously. But like, I think Ant might force more aggressive game planning than any player in the league. So if we were counting like scoring gravity as a part of this, he'd probably be like 5 or 6 for me.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes into playmaking, and then his decision making improving goes into playmaking. So, like I said, not to like harp on the same point, I'm definitely much higher on Ant as an overall offensive player at this point than I am specifically on his scoring, just because of some of those volatility concerns and the short mid-range stuff that we talked about. The other thing with Ant, though, and this could just be penalizing him due to situation, I think he has serious untapped potential as an off-ball scorer that has never been maximized because he hasn't played next to a real point guard. Because he's a lights-out catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He has been since he entered the league. Ridiculously explosive slasher off the catch, capable of moving and relocating without the ball, really good cutter. I do think Ant playing off of like a real point guard, like if you put Ant next to James Harden, for example, I think we just see a completely different animal with Anthony Edwards as a scorer. So maybe I'm penalizing him too much for that, but that's also kind of projection and speculation. So maybe what we're talking about right here is like the end version of Anthony Edwards, where he adds this mid-range game, plays next to another creator and adds this off-ball game, and now he's just the best scorer in the NBA. That's where I think we're headed with Ant. For me, just had him at 9, you had him at 7. I want to really quickly, before we move on, throw on the we got this in progress, just the 10 through 7 to run through. I've been updating this in real time, high level editing here going on. No. So my 10 through 7, I've got Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, and Kevin Durant. Sean.
Oh, my bad. I thought my 10 through 7, I have Damian Lillard at 10, Jason Tatum at 9, Kevin Durant at 8, and Anthony Edwards at 7.
Gotcha. So let's go to your number 6. We'll snake it again. Who's your number 6?
I'm willing to bet money we have the same 6.
I think so too. Who is it?
Steph Curry.
Yes, it is. Talk to me about Steph Curry. What needs to be said, right? What needs to be said about Steph Curry that hasn't been said?
Like, yeah. What's so impressive about Steph, and I feel like this gets talked about, but I'm gonna like just reiterate it: how freaking well in shape he is. And like how considerably like stronger he's been, like stronger built, since like 2021. Because 2015 Steph is amazing, for example, right? 2015 Steph is getting harassed in the Rocket series. He is getting bullied. And for Steph throughout the playoffs to average 25 points per 75, plus 7% relative true shooting percentage, with it. I don't care. I don't. I get what you're saying about scoring gravity. I do, but the amount of attention that Steph has to have just simply by him having the ball, or even with his off-ball gravity, which sure that leverages it to like his teammates and stuff like that too, but when that's such a big part of your offensive game, I'm going to also consider that and count that for his scoring package as well. The dude shot dude had 1.5 points per possession on off-screen possessions in the playoffs. Had 1 point per possession on ball screens in the playoffs against an elite defense in Houston. And I don't know if you saw me. I was like halfway laughing. I was trying to like laugh off camera while you were talking. I was laughing off camera because Steph is a pull-up shooter in the playoffs, had an effective field goal percentage of 71.4% on pull-up jumpers in the playoffs, shooting 83% on pull-up twos and 47% on pull-up threes.
Guys,
like he's not this crazy rim pressure guy, like relatively speaking. He's an elite finisher, one of the best guard finishers we've ever seen, especially in this century, especially for a smaller guard. And then I think the other point that I haven't brought up yet is the fact that like pre-Jimmy Butler trade, if we're going to talk about the regular season, this is the worst offense in basketball with Steph Curry off the floor. Mm-hmm. And that, again, that is partially gravity, that's partially his playmaking, but that's also just the fact that he has the biggest cheat code arguably in NBA history, and that is the fact that he is the greatest shooter ever.
I don't even think it's arguable. I think that is just like the biggest, like it's like, what other cheat codes are there? Like Shaq's size, sure, LeBron's athleticism,
yeah.
But like
Peak LeBron athleticism, but Steph is
dude, the guy crosses half court and he's instantly a threat to generate 1.3 points per possession. It's the dumbest thing ever. It's the dumbest thing, and no matter what, like I'm convinced this dude could be 45 years old and still be a top 10 scorer because like there's nothing you can do about that. It's so insane. Like, was it game 1 against the Rockets where he was making the dumbest shots you'll ever watch in your life? It was either game 1 or 2. But I remember like Houston tried like 3 different defensive coverages just in the first quarter. It was like, okay, we're going to do our 2-3 zone. We're going to do like a 2-1-2 zone. We're going to switch.
I think it was game 1 because game 1's we like iced him down the stretch, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then it's like, we're going to switch everything with all of these big athletic wings who, by the way, Amen Thompson was supposed to be the Steph Curry stopper. That was like what was being said before the playoffs.
Yeah.
We've got some of the best chasers in the league. We've got the most athletic wing depth in the league. We've got double bigs. We're going to blitz everything. We're going to trap everything. And then it's like, yeah, that's cool. Take this sidestep behind the back, fadeaway 3. I'm facing the crowd. You know what shot I'm talking about where he's facing the crowd while he gathers and then turns and shoots from the right wing? And it's like, and it's a perfect make. And it's like, what do you do with that? You don't do anything with that. There is no coverage or defense in existence that this version of Steph can't get his game off against. And that's where we're starting to get into the really heavy hitters where it's like, I think Steph could get up to number 4, probably on my list. I think the top 3 is very solidified.
The top 3 is easily solidified.
Yeah, so I can get Steph up to 4. But yeah, dude, Steph's, and it's funny because like the regular season numbers aren't as impressive. So KD was 27 points per 75 on plus 7% relative true shooting. Steph Curry in the regular season was 27 points per 75 plus 4% relative true shooting. So just stacking up the regular seasons, it'd be like KD had a slightly better regular season scoring output than Steph just in terms of efficiency. The thing that's interesting that we've talked about is like the quiet protest before the Jimmy trade where Steph really wasn't trying to get his shot off. After the Jimmy trade, Steph in the regular season, and obviously this is a smaller sample, but after the Jimmy trade, he was 30 points per 75 on plus 7.5% relative true shooting. Which is like, oh, that's like MVP type of scoring from Steph Curry. They go like 20-5 or whatever they go with Steph and Jimmy. They have a 125 offensive rating with him on the floor after that point. Then he goes into the playoffs, does the exact same thing to the Rockets, and then is doing the exact same thing to the Timberwolves in game 1 before he gets hurt. He had like 13 points in 8 minutes or something like that. And I think Steph at this point, I don't think this is like peak Steph or anything. I think he's pretty clearly regressed. And it's the same thing we talked about with Dame with the agility. And the ability to get to the rim, the finishing at the rim. He's not nearly as dynamic of an on-ball scorer as he used to be. But so much of that is supplemented by A, he's so far ahead of everyone else as a shooter that the jump shot reliance doesn't matter. And B, The off-ball movement, because there's nothing you can do with the off-ball movement. It's the conditioning. Like you said, he never stops moving. He's always flying around screens and doing things without the ball, and that allows you to put these lineups on the floor where we have 2 or 3 non-shooters, and he's still going to be a 65% true shooting guy because spacing, his three-point shot isn't affected by spacing. The ability to get the shot.
I think this season very clearly showed that.
Yeah, like, they would have no weapons on the floor. They would have playoff minutes where it's like Draymond, Looney, insert wing, Jimmy, Draymond, Looney. That's 3 non-3-point shooters right there. It'd be like Steph, Pajemski, Draymond, Jimmy, Looney, and he'd still be giving you like 30 points per 75 in those lineups. It's so insane to me what he can do against any defense. I just think the floor, because of the fact that I just think simply the top 5 all have a much higher floor because A, they are better like volume dynamic on ball guys.
Yep.
And then B, they are more reliable inside the arc scorers. So like, for example, going back to that Rocket series, you go up 3-1. Then in game 5, you shoot 33% from the field in the loss. Then in game 6, you shoot 39% from the field in the loss. And then all of a sudden you're on risk. You're at risk of losing game 7 because you almost blew a 3-1 lead. And obviously there's more that goes into it than that. But there is more volatility with Steph because of the fact that it's relying on that superhuman shot making. And yeah, game 1, 63% from the field, 56% from 3, 31 points against a Houston defense. In a game where, by the way, the end score is 95-85.
Yeah.
Dropping 31 on... Yeah, Steph's ceiling as a scorer is crazy. Yeah, dude, I don't really have what needs to be said about Steph that hasn't been said throughout the tales of NBA history. This guy's a freak, man. This guy's a freak.
So I'm going to assume that we have the same 5.
4 and 5.
Same
and,
top 5.
4 and 5 are very interchangeable. I mean, I'm assuming we have the same 4 and 5.
I'm assuming we have the same top 5 in terms of players.
Yeah, 100%. I would hope so. I would hope at this point there's no... Like, are you going to throw, like, Julius Randle at me? I hope not.
Are you going to throw Paulo Beccaro in here at 5?
Can I admit, I actually did consider Julius Randle. Like, he was one of my light considerations. Like, after the playoff run, Julius Randle. Actually, before we get to the top 5, I want to, like, just throw some names out there. Like, we'll do a little, like, intermission where a couple of the names that I, like, looked at briefly. Tyrese Maxey, Karl Anthony Towns, Paolo Banchero, Pascal Siakam, Julius Randle. I already mentioned Kyrie and Wemby. You mentioned Dame, Zach LaVine. Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, Jaylen Brown, and Cade Cunningham. Just some guys that I was like, yeah, I'll look at you. I'll look at your scoring profile. We'll see how it stacks up against some of my top 10 candidates. Was there anyone else you wanted to mention before we get into the top 5?
No, I'm glad you mentioned, like, specifically Cat, some of those other guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw some names just so they don't feel left out. You know, Cat listening to this right now doesn't want to feel left out. Obviously,
participation trophies, guys.
Exactly.
All 4 of them.
You will kick off the top 5 because I kicked off the top 10.
Sure. So, like you said, 4 and 5 are so interchangeable. And to preface this, I am actually willing to bet money we redo this list next year that my number 5 is not going to be here. He's going to be a lot higher. But for me, 5 is Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
Very, very interchangeable. I think there's an argument. I still think Luka's the better player overall. But simply from a scoring output, I am going to prefer... I mean, I don't know why I'm like hiding. I am going to prefer Jalen Brunson over Luka currently, based on when we last saw them as scorers. The biggest thing with Luka is the fact that he just, again, last time we saw him, just can't consistently put pressure on the rim. And Luka has now become, in a sense, super jump shot rely. Now, he is this absurd shot maker to the point where in the regular season, per 75, Luka averaged 29 on plus 1.3 relative true shooting percentage. But then the playoffs, you're Luka, if anything, I think Luka's playoff run, and I'm saying run very, very lightly because it was a 5-game series where Rudy Gobert sent him packing on a 27-24 performance. I beat you to it. I don't need to hear it from you a second time. But we're being completely honest. Like, Luka in the playoffs rivals some of these other guys that are above him in terms of efficiency. 28.7 points per 75, plus 3.4% relative true shooting percentage, with so much attention on him, and with the fact that, like, dog, they kind of let they were just letting Minnesota tactically like get all up into Luka. I forget what game it was. I think it was game 4 because that was a super close one coming down to the wire. And the Lakers idiotically just like didn't know how to beat aggressive full court pressure. Like, dog, if you don't set a flat ball screen 70 feet away from the rim and like get Luka open. So I think Luka, part of Luka's argument, this can be said honestly for a lot of these guys, but specifically I think Brunson and Shea, it has so much of an offensive burden. I think that also kind of helps his argument as well as an offensive player. You have to consider the Dallas days as well a little bit here. All-time great shot maker. The rim pressure and some of that stuff does bring him back a little bit. I think if we're purely talking about him and Brunson, I think Brunson has the ever so slight edge in terms of counters as a one-on-one scorer. I think Luka definitely has a lot of counters in the bag, but I mean, Jalen Brunson, his new nickname is just Counterman. And
That's
it's clutch.
not an official nickname. That's not sticking.
Wow, Tyler was on mute the entire time, and then unmutes just to shit on the nickname. All right,
That is terrible.
all right, we'll go back to the whiteboard, and we'll look at the film and run that. But maybe it was the delivery. It was the delivery.
Counterman.
Counterman.
You could do better than that.
All right. Yeah, I apologize to my fans. I disappointed everybody.
I loved where you were going with that, though. So continue, please.
Oh, well.
Just without the nickname.
I'm heartbroken now, so I'm a little thrown off. No, all seriousness, I do think Brunson's counters. Actually, no, I will say that. I think Brunson's counters as a one-on-one scorer make him in a way, if we are. Okay, this is so, like, damn near unfair and, like, ridiculous because that's not how basketball works, but. Picture we're playing one-on-one. If we're simply talking about like creation ability, Jalen Brunson is the harder one-on-one player to guard. More counters, more downhill pressure, I think, currently than Luka Doncic. And to a certain extent, like, I don't think Luka is trying to do too much. I think Luka, in a sense, has a little bit more of a simplified one-on-one like creation game where, look, I'm going to try to create some space, some separation, be ball screen centric, but I'm going to get to my step back 3, or I'm going to get to a bump fade in the midi or something. You know what I'm trying to say? I do think Brunson's versatility in terms of things I can go to from a standstill does edge out Luka currently. So I have Luka 5. I think Luka's the better player. Clear that up because I think the number one thing that comes out when you have like a Luka Brunson conversation is, oh, Luka's a horrible defender. Since when was Jalen Brunson a good defensive player?
Have you not seen the charges drawn numbers?
Have you seen the charges drawn per 75?
Yeah. Like, respect it. Help defender, charge, rim protector, Jalen Brunson.
So, spoiler, I have Luka 5, Jalen Brunson 4.
So I had him flipped. I had 5 Brunson, 4 Luka.
Okay.
Again, pretty interchangeable. I think both of them, for how different they are, their scoring is gone about in the same way, which you kind of touched on. Like a lot of spread pick and roll stuff, a lot of like empty side isolation stuff. Both like to post up a lot.
Yeah.
I think the one huge difference, actually, I'd say even more than the counters to me, that really gives Luka the edge is just the size. I think Luka being as big as he is gives him a higher floor in terms of, yes, Brunson can do more, but Luka doesn't have to do more because of the size. And to my point on that, I agree with you. Brunson puts more downhill pressure. This version, I also want to say, like, the peak version of Luka is in the top 3 tier. Like, has an argument for number 1. We both agree that this was a down year for Luka because of like some of the injury stuff, the conditioning stuff, the driving. Like, just wasn't. I always reference a specific play from the Minnesota series where he got Randall switched onto him, worked for like 15 seconds and couldn't get around Julius Randle. Whereas you go back 2 years ago and Jaden McDaniels couldn't stay in front of Luka. Now Randall can stay in front of him, and it's like, what happened? Clearly just like regressed as an athlete, and I think he'll get back to that level this upcoming season. He's actually about to play in Eurobasket in like a month, so I'm excited to see how he looks there. But to your point, in the 2025 playoffs, Brunson 4 shot attempts at the rim every 75 possessions. Luka 3. Not a huge difference, but 4 versus 3, that is somewhat of it's noticeable. It's a whole shot. But I would say the bigger difference is Luka made 71% of those shots and Brunson made 53%. And I think that is where the size comes into play. Like Luka might not get to the rim too much, but when he does get to the rim, it is an automatic shot. He does not miss shots at the rim. Just world-class touch. And also like probably the best floater in the league of anyone not named Jokic, which Brunson's also in that discussion too. Both of those guys just masterful touch around the basket. But Brunson's lack of size and length does hurt him as a finisher at the rim in the playoffs. And I do think that's one thing he consistently runs into with efficiency concerns, because you get these playoff series every time where he's like 33 or 34 points per game or 35 points per game even. But the efficiency is always hovering around like 56, 57% true shooting. Whereas Luka's ceiling as a scorer is like, I can max that volume, but also I can get to 63 or 64% because I can do everything you can do in the mid range and with the pull up three, but also I'm going to make 70% of my shots at the rim. Luka also got to the free throw line more in the playoffs than Brunson, which is worth noting. Like both these guys are high volume free throw guys. Brunson adding the pull up three makes things really interesting though. Like, that makes him so much of a tougher cover in the pick and roll and in isolation. The fact that he's now a volume pull-up three-point shooter. And I think, like, Brunson might get underrated as a scorer in terms of, like, I don't know, like, how the general consensus views him as a scorer. Like, if even, like, maybe him being a top 5 scorer on both of our lists is somewhat of a hot take. I don't really know how he's viewed. But, like, the fact that he can handle the ball 90 times and turn it over twice is a huge, huge bonus because he's always going to get you a shot. Like I said, some people will associate that with playmaking. I think because he's looking to score on most of these plays, the ball security is a point in favor of his scoring. Can get anywhere on the court at will, can make like 50% of his mid-range shots, can make 55% of his floaters, can make the volume pull-up three at like a 35 to 36% clip in the playoffs. Super dynamic on-ball scorer. Neither of these guys are really giving you much off-ball value. I'd actually say Brunson's the slightly better off-ball scorer because he's a better catch-and-shoot three-point guy. Probably a quicker decision-maker off the catch. Luka has that tendency to catch and stand and kind of wait for plays to materialize. But I do think, yeah, if I had to split hairs, to me, the big difference is just we've seen Luka hit heights that Brunson hasn't hit in the past. Yeah. Maybe I'm giving him credit for that. But also just the actual size difference. Luka's got 7 inches and 50 pounds on this guy. There's just less you can do with that from an on-ball standpoint. And I do think that if I had to split hairs between two guys who I think are pretty interchangeable, I'd give Luka the slight edge. But I definitely see the Brunson argument. 4 and 5, not mad at either, being in either spot.
And really quickly, when talking about Luka's playoff numbers this season, that, by the way, is including a Game 3 where he is dying on the court. Like, yeah. Game 1, 37 on 54.5% shooting. Game 2, 31 point near triple-double. Took 11 free throws, 45% from the field. Game 4, 38 points. Game 5 is his weakest scoring game when healthy. Still got 28. I think another good point for Luka is like at his floor. His floor as a scorer is just stupidly high.
So high. Yeah, because like the shot making, the ability to get to the line, the size, the fact that he's going to give you 3 or 4 shots at the rim and make pretty much all of them. Yeah. Luka's pretty much guaranteed to give you close to 30 on average efficiency. You won't really get much less. Even in the 2024 playoffs, where his scoring felt really weak at times because of the knee injury and stuff and the way he was moving, you still get games like the OKC series, for example, in 2024. The first 4 games, he's really struggling to find his footing as a scorer. And then when the series is 2-2 and it's time to close, games 5 and 6, this guy's just an amazing scorer.
31-point triple-double, 29-point triple-double, shot 54.5%, 60% from the floor.
Yeah, it's like Luka's a crazy scorer. And like I said, if he gets back to like 2023 form as a slasher and that like healthy version, he very clearly has an argument for number 1. And it's just one of the most talented on-ball scorers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he's at this point still the most versatile on-ball scorer in the league. Even at this version, he can do so much. He can post up, he can pick and roll, he can ISO. There's nothing he can't do. Real quickly, before we get into our shared top 3, let's run through 10 through 4 real quick. So my number 10 was Tatum, 9 Ant, 8 Donovan Mitchell, 7 KD, 6 Steph, 5 Brunson, 4 Luka.
My top 10 are 10 through 4. Dame 10, Jason Tatum 9, KD 8, Anthony Edwards 7, Steph Curry 6, Luka 5, Jalen Brunson 4.
All right. We've got pretty similar lists. I like the way this is shaping up. We've had some good conversations. We're an hour and a half in. Now we get to the heavy hitters. I want to say I think 1 through 3 is very solidified. I don't see a pathway where any of these guys get knocked out of the top 3 just based off of what we saw in 2025. I think all of these guys have a very strong claim for number 1 depending on what you value. And it's going to be kind of nasty the way we split here. Like, we're going to say I'm sure both of us are going to say, like, the most nitpicky things ever to make these differences, and it's going to sound really stupid, so prepare yourself for that. Also, I would say all 3 of these guys have an argument to be top 10 scorers of all time. Is that a hot take?
No, no.
Like, I think all of these guys are, like, these are some of the greatest scorers we've ever seen, and they're all at their absolute peak as scorers, in my opinion. I'll start off the top 3 because you started off the top 5. Don't feel good about this at all. I hate doing this. My number 3 is Giannis.
Mm-hmm. My 3 is Giannis.
Okay, so we agree there. This one hurts because I think from a pure number standpoint, he should be number 1. He had in the regular season 2025, 32.5 points per 75 plus 5% relative true shooting. Just to really reiterate the type of scores we're talking about now, Luka was 29 plus 1, Brunson was 28 plus 3, KD was 27 plus 7, Steph was 27 plus 4. Giannis now we're getting up to 33 plus 5. Like, there's just a clear jump here to the caliber of score we're talking about. 2025 playoffs against the Pacers, 33 points per 75 plus 8% relative true shooting. Yeah, I think this is pretty clearly his peak as a scorer because of the way he's abandoned the 3-ball and leaned into the mid-range as a legitimate counter. He shot 44% from mid-range this season, which is just, like, really freaking good, especially when you're not recognized as a mid-range scorer. My only pushback with the actual approach to scoring itself is that I'd like to see the mid-range used more as a counter than a go-to. It seems like there were a lot of plays, and it could just be coasting throughout the regular season, but there were a lot of plays where it's like, okay, because I can hit the mid-range, I'm going to start looking for the mid-range, so I'm going to walk into the half court, and if I'm sagged off, I'm just going to take the elbow jumper with 19 seconds on the clock. And I would like to see him try to force the issue a little bit more, but then we kind of saw that in the playoffs. Like, he kind of didn't look for the mid-range as much in the playoffs, but then it was like the mid-range kind of abandoned him. He didn't really hit the 44% clip. So how much of that was just coasting in the regular season? I'm going to walk into the shot. I don't really know that. So kind of like what I talked about with Ant with the pull-up 3, there is a level of questionability. I don't even know if that's a word. I just made up something. Questionableness with the mid-range scoring. I don't know. I want to see another season of it before I'm really like, okay, this is legitimately great mid-range scorer. But yeah, monster slasher, the biggest interior scoring presence we've seen since either peak LeBron or peak Shaq, still to this point. The best transition scorer in the league. I think the off-ball scoring is sometime, like, some possessions it's amazing, some possessions you'd like a little bit more. I think the screen and roll stuff, like as a lob threat, is huge. His ability to play out of the short roll and just put anyone on a poster, huge. Big offensive rebounder, especially in the playoffs. Big cutter. I think sometimes his off-ball positioning is just kind of clunky, and maybe that's something that would fall into playmaking because I think there are times where he hurts the spacing of the offense by being in a weird spot. But I'd say the main thing that there were two things. There were two things that just held him back from being in the top 2. So I'm not going to spoil who I have 1 and who I have 2, but I would say we all know it's Shea and Jokic. Those are the 2 guys.
I swear you're going to say AD.
AD? You thought I was going to have AD in the top 2?
Hey, I don't know.
You never know, man. You never know. Shout out to AD. Shea, I think both of those guys have more of a go-to action in the half court where you point to that and this is going to give us like all-time efficiency. Shea, it's a perimeter isolation. You get a Shea perimeter isolation, no matter what the defense is, no matter who's on him, no matter what the spacing looks like, he is a threat to get to a really good shot every single time. With Jokic, it's a post-up. A Jokic post-up might be the most efficient half-court offensive option ever. You know what you're getting from a Jokic post-up. I don't think Giannis has that one play where it's like, is it a mid-post isolation? Is it a face-up? Is it a pick-and-roll? I don't think Giannis has that one half-court play type that you can just always fall back on for late-game offense and expect a good result. So I'd say if we're splitting hairs, you get into a deep playoff run against one of the best defenses. I don't really know if the Bucks would have ran into that at all throughout this run. Let's assume they face. I don't even know. Let's assume they face OKC. Well, let's assume they make to the finals and face OKC. Once OKC gets into their shell defense, where are you getting the ball to Giannis and saying, and in the half court and saying, we know you can give us an efficient 30? That's kind of what's tough for me. And obviously, like I said, it's going to sound really nitpicky because Giannis is going to find ways to get you an efficient 30 between the pick and roll stuff, between the early offense, the transition stuff, the offensive rebounding. But I think having a go-to action is somewhere I'm going to split hairs. The other thing is the 62% free throw shooting. That is just a serious flaw. Both of the guys I have ahead of him are just really reliable free throw shooters who, again, down the stretch of games, if it comes into late game fouling, you know they're going to hit both, or at least most of the time they're going to hit both. And I do think if we have to get nitpicky, Giannis being a weak free throw shooter and then also not having one superhuman go-to half-court scoring action, for me are the two things that just very, very marginally split the hairs from 1 and 2.
Yeah. I have Giannis 3. I don't even want to add anything.
So
it's so easy.
So you had Giannis pretty clearly, or
no. I'm saying not that's not what I was referring to. I said it's so easy. I was more so saying he's what he does well. It's so easy to just talk about, to the point that it's not. I don't need to regurgitate.
I will say, and I do want to kind of quickly make the short argument for if Giannis were to be number 1, it would be simply that his paint scoring, his superpower is easily the strongest superpower of any scorer in the league. Where it's I don't really know if any playoff defense could take that away at this point. 9 or 10 shots at the rim at an 80% clip. It's absurd.
I think he averaged 12 per game in the regular season, but cool. If you're still getting 10 in the playoffs, congrats. You took off 2 shots.
Right. And I don't think there's any really a playoff defense in existence that could really, even OKC, what OKC was doing against Anthony Edwards. I don't think you can do that against Giannis because the size, the dude's 7 foot, 250 pounds. There's nothing you can do with it. I do think Giannis, if you were to make the argument for Giannis at 1, it'd be the fact that his superpower is
rivaled by prime Bron and peak Shaq.
Right. That's what. And that's what it is. And then everything else kind of doesn't matter after that because we saw it against Indiana. He's just going to get a layup or a dunk pretty much every possession. So yeah, I do think Giannis has a strong argument for 1, but if I had to split hairs, I get him at 3. Who was your number 2?
So my number 2, again, there's an argument for 1 for all these guys, and I hate having him 2. My number 2 is Shea. I do have Shea 2. I mean, the ridiculous levels of efficiency as an isolation scorer, the versatility as an isolation scorer, just the fact that, the elite, probably, okay, you said Giannis is 1, probably the second best transition scorer in the league. I think there's an argument for Shea. It's almost okay, cool, for every time I take a tough one in the half court, I'm so dynamic in transition, and to the point where okay, it's cool. It's gonna balance itself out in air quotes. I don't even know if that matters because that's how elite of a shot maker he is in the half court. The counters, the fact that he puts so much pressure on the defense to the point, and he knows the counters, he knows the ins and outs of what's going to be allowed, and there's a certain of scoring IQ, and this also falls for Brunson and Luka too, obviously. But oh my God, he's foul baiting. We have not heard that in a few episodes. But the fact that he's so elite at getting you on his tip, I think it was Richard Jefferson that said it best. He's foul baiting in air quotes, but dog, he's 3 feet ahead of you every single time. It's a blow by. You're playing from behind, and then Shea is able to master deceleration, knows how to have your hands places where you don't want them to be, basketball wise, and I think the continued leap as a pull up 3-point shooter. It's so nitpicky. I'm gonna save my nitpick for when we get to the Jokic discussion at 1 for me at least. And then if you want the numbers from the league MVP in the regular season 34. So Giannis 32.5 points +5 relative true shooting. Shea 34 points per 75 +5.7% relative true shooting. And then even if we go playoffs, so if you go to the playoffs for Shea, the efficiency did drop a little bit, but like you're still getting 30 on damn near average efficiency when you're facing some of the most obscene defensive coverages, specifically in the Denver series. Denver threw I know the saying is the kitchen sink, but they threw the entire apartment complex at Shea from a defensive coverage standpoint, and he still averages 30 on relatively average efficiency. And like, okay, that's our floor from our elite offensive engine. When for some reason, again, this never made sense that there was a question mark on Shea as a playoff scorer. Nope, just an efficient 30 or average efficient 30, and he's arguably, I scratched what I was about to say. He's an elite regular season offensive engine. And we'll leave it at that. I have Shea at 2. Don't feel good, but I do have Shea at 2.
I want you, before I respond, I want you to then go to number 1 Jokic, and I want to start. We'll do a little back and forth. So explain number 1 Jokic for me.
So I have Jokic at 1. I think you somewhat made part of the argument for me when you were going through like Jokic, Giannis, and Shea earlier. Jokic in the regular season, 29 points on basically +9 relative true shooting. Jokic, the thing for Jokic is like he has like you said, the most efficient play type in the half court out of anybody. And part of that is because of the playmaking he has, but part of that is he's just this goofy level shot maker. And that's like honestly the best compliment I could give Jokic. And I think actually there are two things that for me at least allow me to, because last year I actually would not have had Jokic 1. If we're going 2024 Jokic versus 25 Shea, 25 Giannis, I probably would have had Jokic 3, to be completely honest with you. But just based off of this year, the two things that allow Jokic, for me at least, to be 1 is the fact that last year was a fluke in terms of the three-point shot, where in the regular season and playoffs, shot 50% on pick and pop threes, 46.5% on just regular spot up threes. He even got a decent diet in terms of pick and roll on ball threes. 47% on 50 attempts on pick and roll ball handler threes in the regular season and playoffs. I think the godly level of versatility as an offensive player, and that makes him almost scheme proof in a playoff setting. I don't know why I said almost. It makes him scheme proof in a playoff setting where literally the only series they lost in the past 3, except we're going to eliminate OKC. Outside of the OKC series, in the past 3 years, the one series they lost the series, Jokic couldn't hit anything from a shot-making standpoint, which is Minnesota. Like, the three-point ball, they tried to force him to shoot more threes than he probably would have liked to, and he couldn't hit a single three, it felt like, throughout the entire, really last year in general. Last year was a noticeable step, 2024 was a noticeable step back from Jokic in terms of three-point efficiency. And now it's, we're just back to 2023, like, godly levels of shot making from anywhere on the floor, where he's terrorizing my Lakers with shot put threes with 0.8 seconds left on the shot clock, and it's just going in. So the fact that he has the most efficient play type, pass outs, or just scoring weapon in general, the fact that he has ridiculous shot making, which Shea also has the same argument, but ridiculous shot making from literally every single spot on the floor, the unreal versatility as an offensive player. I think, and the fact, and this might be cheating, and this is actually an argument for Giannis too, a little bit, actually. And I think you made it a little bit. And it's maybe unfair to Shea, but shrug. Due to the nature of how Jokic plays, he is starting almost every possession when he catches the ball, unless you're going like the delay stuff or whatever. But then you also have the roller gravity and stuff like that. Based off where he catches it, unless they're going to their 5-out stuff, he is actively starting from damn near closest to the most efficient spot on the floor, which I do think matters and helps out Jokic's case where we're talking about his efficiency and his versatility, all this other stuff, and his how unstoppable he is at times as a scorer. So I'm going to have Jokic 1. Like I said, 2024 Jokic, I would have had him damn near comfortably at 3. The return to form as a jump shooter, the fact that he's an unstoppable post-up scorer, and everything that he provides for Denver. Oh, wait. This was actually the other thing I forgot. I'm glad that I remembered it. Do you remember what our conversation was about Jokic, like after the first week of the season? It was something you said.
I do not.
So the conversation specifically about Jokic, and it was specifically about this Denver team, because if my memory serves me correctly, Denver came out the gate maybe like 2-2. It was a very mediocre start to the season for Denver. And
I remember.
Go on a limb and say it was like episode 6 or whatever, very early in the year. You were like, I would just love for Jokic to come out and basically start gunning, essentially, and get the shots up, where I think that is something that, in a sense, you could look at Jokic as a drawback, in air quotes, say, yeah, Jokic compared to these other high-level, Jokic of years past, rather, it doesn't have the ridiculous volume that, as a scorer, that some of the other, elite scorers has. Jokic this season, that's per 75. We don't even have to go per 75. More higher volume score. The efficiency got better compared to last season. The efficiency is basically +2 relative true shooting compared to last season. And Jokic is efficiency king because of, again, how he plays in general. But to see Jokic considerably up the volume as a scorer and hunt for his shots, he basically added 2 shots. He added an additional 2 shots. He's averaging more consistently 20 shots per game in averaging 20 shots per game in a regular season. Where in years past it was 17. You had 2023 where he was weirdly closer to 15 shots per game. Elite against the line, or good enough at least, averaging 6 attempts per game throughout basically his prime over the past few years. So the volume increasing and the efficiency getting even better on top of everything else I said. That's my argument for Jokic at 1.
Yeah, I hear you. I think what's really interesting with the Jokic conversation is I feel like people view the OKC series as somewhat of a negative for him because the production wasn't as great as it usually is. But I'd actually say a point in favor is the types of heights he was able to reach against that OKC defense. Like, for example,
is it game 5?
Game 5 was just like one of the best games ever. 44 points on 68% shooting. I can't believe they lost that game, by the way. Like, that's crazy to me that he has that game and they lose. Game 1, though, 42 points, 52% shooting. By the way, no player in the league scored 40 against the Thunder in the regular season or playoffs, and Jokic did it twice in the same series.
Yeah.
He's the only guy to do it. Then game 6 as well, 29.64% shooting. I will say the efficiency is easily the biggest point in favor of Jokic. He's got the best touch we've ever seen.
Yep.
Between like the hook shots and short jumpers out of the post to the push shots out of pick and roll, all of that stuff. He's the king of the short mid range. He's super efficient from long mid range. He's efficient from every single spot on the floor, and he can get to those shots in more ways than maybe any player in the league. Like easily, let me look back at my list. Like I'm pretty sure it's KD, Steph, and Jokic as like the best off-ball scorers on the planet. In terms of what the versatility, like you can run, like for example, Clippers series. Jokic has a big center on him in Zoo, and now he's running around screens like a wing, like running off pin downs and shooting curling middies. But then you get a smaller center like Chet, and it's like, okay, now I'm gonna barrel you in the post. Now OKC's gonna have to put wings on me and things like that. It's just all this interesting stuff with Jokic. Like I said, forces more game plan. Like I talked about with Ant, forces just insane defensive game planning because of how much he can do. What's really interesting to me, though, is the whole. I don't think his scoring is maximized with the Nuggets because he doesn't play with like a great pass first playmaking point guard. And what I mean by that is like between the pick and roll stuff, between the post up stuff, you can only like imagine what his scoring would look like if he had another like downhill scoring threat who was looking for the pass consistently. Like we saw even just with this version of Russ. How much better Jokic's scoring looked whenever Russ was on the court because of his ability to slash and make those passes to the short mid-range opportunities and the pressure he generated. But imagine if it was like Ja Morant or even like a former version of Prime Russ or just someone else that's an elite scorer. We haven't yet seen, and every all-time great plays with players of this caliber, and we have not seen it with Jokic. And I do wonder how much different we look at Jokic's playoff scoring if he played with another guy to take that pressure off of him. Because I do think the one pushback I'd have with Jokic is that between all of the guys we've talked about really on this entire list, he is more reliant on someone getting him the ball in his spots than any other player. And we've had this conversation multiple times. Like the Lakers game is kind of like where it really started. Was that in February? Where they were switching every wing onto him, fronting every pass, sending the low man. And the reason you can do that is A, they don't have someone to make the entry pass, and B, they don't have the shooting on the weak side to really take advantage of it. So maybe this year all of my concerns are eased because now they've got Cam Johnson, Tim Hardaway Jr. They've just like loaded up on shooters. Bruce Brown's back. Maybe that kind of shifts the narrative with this. But I do think there's something to be said about the fact that even in the playoffs, like the Nick Batum small ball minutes, we've seen teams stick wings on Jokic, front every pass, and just make him really uncomfortable. Like in the OKC series, going back to the OKC series, game 1, 7 turnovers, game 2, 6 turnovers, game
Caruso,
3,
game 7.
Game 7, 5 turnovers. Lots of offensive fouls in these series, lots of just losing the ball while trying to corral an entry pass. And I do think like that would be my one pushback with Jokic. Again, we have to get nitpicky and split hairs. Is that when he gets the ball, he is easily the best scorer on the planet, in my opinion. At least when he gets the ball in the post. Obviously, he can play point center, he can do those things, but he's not as dynamic of a scorer out on the perimeter as some of these other guys. When he gets the ball in the post, he's instantly the best scorer on the planet, and I don't even think you would dispute. Like, I don't think anyone would dispute that. Like, there's nothing you could do with him once he gets the ball in the post. The problem is what it takes to get him the ball in those spots. And for that reason alone, I did put Shea at 1 and Jokic at 2. And it's just simply the fact that Shea is more effective as a scorer when he's initiating. So his volume feels more inevitable. So in the 2025 playoffs, and again, Shea didn't have to play against the Thunder. He was on the Thunder. So it's like he gets a boost in terms of the defense. Like Jokic had to face that defense and he didn't. But in the playoffs, from Shea, you get 30 points per 75. From Jokic, you get 24.7. And I do think that's a pretty big difference in terms of volume. And what's interesting is most of that comes from the Clippers series. Like, Game 5 against the Clippers, Jokic has 13 points on 30% from the field. Even Game 7 against the Clippers, 16 points on 40% from the field. So Jokic even was starting to have those lows against the Clippers. He was matched by the size of Zoo. Zoo had a phenomenal defensive series. Also the wings and all that switching, like I was talking about, some Nick Batum at the 5 minutes. You get some Ben Simmons minutes in there. And it does feel like there are more ways to take away Jokic's volume. Even though Shea... So the Jokic argument would be Shea can't match his off-ball production, so you can't fit him next to other ball handlers in the same way and still maximize his scoring. And also, Shea will never hit the efficiency heights that Jokic hits because he just doesn't have... Like, I do think one point against Shea is that, yes, he's such an S-tier... He's one of the greatest mid-range scorers we've ever seen, but there is something to be said about the fact that these elite playoff defenses do take away a lot of the layups and stuff. Like, early in that Denver series, or even in Indiana, not getting to the rim nearly as much as he did in the regular season. And I do think that's why his efficiency kind of jumps down from like +5, +6% to like +1, +2, or even average efficiency. So that'd be a point in favor of Jokic. But I do think there's something to be said about the inevitability of Shea's volume. So I just want to read a little game log. So we're going to start, actually, we get to do the whole playoffs. Game 1 of Memphis series, 15 points in 23 minutes. That is what it is, you know, it's like a feel-out game. They win by 50. They won that game by 51 points. I don't really care that he scored 15. From then on, 27, 31, 38, 33, 34, 18. So game 3 against Denver is the one low. 18.
I thought you were reading off shot attempts for a second. I was about to say, wait, what?
No, these are points.
My bad.
By the way, in game 2 against Denver, he was plus 51. He had 34 points on 85% shooting. 18 points in game 3, so that's the one low point. 25, 31, 32, 35, 31, 38. Then another low game. 14 points in 27 minutes against Minnesota. They lose by 40. Then it's right back to 40, 34, 38, 34, 24, 35, 31, 21, 29. Point being, there's basically nothing you can do to prevent Shea from getting 28, 29 plus points. I think over the last, how many playoff games did he play in total? 23 playoff games, and he had 30 in 18 of them or 17 of them. Just such an inevitable volume scorer that, to me, when we're talking about the best scorer on the planet, I want it to be a guy where it's even if the shot isn't falling, or even if he can't get the ball where he wants to get the ball, you're basically just guaranteeing a 30. And I think Shea has that. It's kind of like the Kobe argument. That's what Kobe had back in the 2000s. I think Shea's ability to create out of so many situations with the ball, and by the way, never turn the ball over. I didn't even read off the fact that in these games, it's 2 turnovers every time. 1 turnover in some of these games. Ball on a string, never turns it over, initiating most of the offense, can play out of the post, can play out of pick and roll, can play out of isolation, can go against... He saw, like you said, they were throwing the apartment complex at him in every series. Just every coverage imaginable, switching, dropping, zoning, hedging, you name it, Shea saw it. You name it, Shea gave it 30. And that's really what it comes down to. Was that a bar? Is that kind of a bar?
That's a bar. Oh, my
That's
goodness.
a bar. That's my argument for Shea, is that...
Put that on a T-shirt.
There we go. Hoop Venue T-shirt. You name it, he gave it 30. That's new merch coming out. In all seriousness, Jokic got the off-ball argument. He's got the inevitability argument in terms of efficiency. You can't really do much to take away his efficiency because of the shot making and the way he generates easy shots. The offensive rebounding is a plus in favor of him. Same with Giannis. I'd say Jokic post-up being the most reliable half-court scoring action on the planet gives him an argument for number 1 as well. Also, the fact that he's not maximized. I do think Shea... Maybe that's an argument for Shea, though, because he doesn't really need to be maximized because the ball's in his hands as an initiator. I don't know, man. That's what makes it tough. That's what gives all these 3 guys a strong argument for number 1. But, yeah, splitting hairs, I think Shea's inevitability as a volume scorer, the fact that he's going to sleepwalk to 30 against every playoff defense, against every coverage, to me, just gives him the edge at number 1. So just to recap with some numbers, last 3 playoff runs, for Shea, you get 29 points per 75, 57% true shooting. For Jokic, you get 27 points per 75, 62% true shooting. So again, kind of a volume versus an efficiency thing. 2025 season, 29 points per 75 on plus 9% true shooting for Jokic. 34 points per 75 on plus 6% true shooting for Shea. Same thing. More volume. Jokic has more efficiency. And then 2025 playoffs, 30 points per 75 on about average true shooting for Shea. And then Jokic, 25 points per 75 plus 2% true shooting. So you have this very consistent trend of Shea's going to give you 3 or 4 more points at least per 75, but Jokic is going to give you 2 or 3% better true shooting. And it's what do you prefer? I could go either way. Ultimately, I give Shea the slightest edge at number 1, and probably would have both of these guys in my top 10 to 12 scorers of all time. So we're talking about just ridiculous
all
scores.
Time. Yeah, I will say that I not saying it was easy. I did consider slightly Jokic and Shea more. I mean, obviously, it's 1-2.
Then Giannis, you're saying?
Yeah, slightly.
That's fair. Yeah, that's
tough.
we got a crazy talented era.
How are we gonna do a top 25 players list and we did a top 10 scorers in 2 hours?
So, yeah, we'll have to talk about that. We'll have to either split it up or we'll have to just make sure we're not rambling. Because, yeah, I'm not dropping an 8-hour episode. That's crazy work. That's
crazy.
That is some crit. Let's run through our lists real quick one more time. Just to reiterate what we had. You can start us off. What was your top 10?
So my top 10 was number 10, Damian Lillard. Number 9, Jason Tatum. Number 8, Kevin Durant. Number 7, Anthony Edwards. Number 6, Steph Curry. Number 5, Luka Doncic. Number 4, Jalen Brunson. Number 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 2, the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And number 1, Nikola Jokic.
Yes, sir. For me, 10, Jason Tatum. Oh, actually, before I start the 10, Booker and LeBron were my 2 really tough cuts, 11 and 12. 10, Jason Tatum. 9, Anthony Edwards. 8, Donovan Mitchell. 7, Kevin Durant. 6, Steph Curry. 5, Jalen Brunson. 4, Luka Doncic. 3, Giannis. 2, Jokic. 1, Shea. If I had to like kind of split it up into tiers, I'd go 1 through 3 is a tier. Then I'd go probably 4 through 6 is a tier. And then 7 through however far you want to go.
Yeah.
What about you? Like, if you had to break it up into tiers, what would you kind of do?
First, Booker and Mitchell would have been my first 2 off.
Okay.
1 through 3 is a tier. 4 through 7,
Okay.
for me, is probably a tier. And then 8 through 12.
Well, it's weird. I don't even like doing tiers because I said 4 through 6 is a tier, but I also said I could see Edwards as high as 5.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, dude. I don't know what to do with this. This is why I
Top
hate
3
rankings.
is by themselves, and then everybody else is...
Yeah, exactly. Everyone else kind of is just trying to join the party. Yeah, but that's going to do it for the top 10 scorers. Let us know down in the comments what your lists looked like. I'm really curious to see kind of what the general consensus on some of these players are, so let us know. We really appreciate you guys listening all the way through if you survived 2 hours of rambling on scorers. We'll be back in a few days for top 10 playmakers, which actually I think will be a lot more interesting because it'll be a lot less numbers based. There's not really much you can't look at scoring volume and efficiency for playmakers. It's basically like, okay, we have assists, we have turnovers, then it's like everything else is mental. It's like scoring gravity, it's passing versatility. That'll be a really interesting conversation. So playmakers is coming up next. If you want to be in tune for that, make sure you subscribe, follow, notifications on, all that good stuff. Make sure to follow us on social media. Sean's on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. He's on Instagram at Sean_Davis23. He's on YouTube at The Sports Headline Show and the Los Angeles Lakers Network. I'm on all platforms at Tyler Britton_ for personal stuff. And then at Hoop Venue is all of my NBA-based content, especially on YouTube. Of course, that's the main platform. Once again, we really appreciate you guys listening, and we will catch you guys next time with the top 10 playmakers.